Welcome back! In the last week of April, I set out on a challenge given to me by my viewers. Use Windows 98 for a whole week. If you missed part 1 where I talk about the system I put together for this challenge, you can catch that video up over here. It's been a while, and you're probably wondering how my week went. While I wasn't able to just uproot my present-day computing experience and drop it into a 25-year-old operating system, I didn't actually end up having the week from heck that I think most folks seem to be expecting. So if you're curious about what's possible in Win98 in the modern day, pull up a seat. All set? Bottoms up. I mentioned it in passing in part 1, but the key to this experiment working was Kernel X. If you're not familiar with what Kernel X is, it's a compatibility layer that, instead of providing backwards compatibility like Microsoft's built-in layers do in modern Windows, it provides forwards compatibility with Windows 2000 and Windows XP. I used the 2019.24 update release of Kernel X, which includes an impressive array of fixes for a really large number of apps. Most interestingly, support for some fairly recent versions of Firefox, at least the extended support releases. So what that looked like, starting with a base install of Windows 98, was this. I first added my standard patches to every installation of Windows 98 that I do: DirectX, the Windows installer update, drivers for my hardware. Next, since Windows NT and XP in 2000 is a Unicode operating system, I added the Unicode layer for Windows 98, called Unicows. Once that's installed, you can go ahead and install Kernel X. I also then installed the basic patches from the Unofficial Service Pack 3. Unofficial Service Pack 3 is a community collection of patches and hacks for Win98, and not everyone sees success using them. For example, Daemon Tools had trouble installing correctly for me afterwards, which happens to a lot of folks actually. It turns out, it's a setting in Kernel X that gets modified by the Service Pack. Once I disabled the Kernel X extensions for daemon.dll, Daemon Tools worked just fine. Finally, I installed several browsers, trying to find the newest one I could get running. I ended up following these instructions here, link in the description, to get Firefox 48 ESR operational on the system. So with the base software install completed, I started the challenge, confident that if I needed something else at this point, I could just find it and download it with my wide array of hacked web browsers. The challenge started on a Thursday evening, and this day 0 involved me trying to find a resolution that would both play nicely with the NVIDIA graphics driver I was using and my relatively modern but low-end 4K monitor. Why am I even mentioning this? Well, between my monitor being picky about what resolutions it likes to display and the old NVIDIA driver being picky about what resolutions it wanted to drive on the 6600 GT, I ended up having to settle for just over 720p, 1280 by 768, which actually turned out to be basically fine. Things looked pretty great at that resolution, and it was close enough to the correct aspect ratio that nothing appeared to be squished too badly that it really bothered me. By the end of the night, I had Windows, Morrowind, Outrun 2006, and Quake 3 all running at my weird but functional sorta 720p. The next day, of course, was Friday, and it started out like most of my workdays during this challenge. I still had to use my work laptop to do my actual day job, so I hooked the Win98 machine up to my good speakers, and it became a jukebox during the workday. I did try briefly to get my existing MP3 library onto this machine, but I didn't feel like spending an entire day of my challenge figuring out what settings to change in Samba on my file server to get this machine to actually connect to it successfully. When I could instead slurp down classic module music from the mod archive directly on the machine itself. The archive includes wget URLs for all of their hosted modules, so I snagged GNU wget, which still works perfectly in Win98, and the first day I downloaded a bulk list of modules from Andrew G. Sega, also known as Necros. That was my work soundtrack for the day. Each workday, I'd find another mod musician and slurp down their discography from the archive and listen to it during the day. It was pretty great. My evenings, though, were much more interesting. Once quitting time rolled around, I could really explore what this system was capable of, and from here on out, that's what I'm going to spend time describing. Friday evening was, of course, the start of the weekend with the Win98 machine, and I kicked it off with some Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. I love this game so much, and running it on this hardware in aspect ratio correct widescreen was superb. Next up, I tried to do some tabletop RPG planning with a friend via a shared Google Doc, and I discovered something that would hold true for most of my use of the web this week. I could browse modern websites, but I could not, for whatever reason, log into them. After that somewhat disappointing test, I went back to Morrowind, but it started to get unstable on me after playing for a while. The blue screens I was getting seemed to indicate the sound card was the issue. I opened up the case and, sure enough, my trusty old Diamond Monster sound was very warm to the touch. I swapped it out for my AOpen Cobra with its Yamaha YMF744 chipset and installed the necessary drivers from the Vogon's driver wiki. Still all without touching any of my newer computers. My plan was working. This did the trick, and I resumed playing Morrowind with no crashes for the rest of the night. Lastly, before bed, I tested out Sonic Heroes, since, to my surprise, I'd discovered that it was a native Win98 game. And indeed, it worked flawlessly on this Athlon 64 and GeForce 6600 GT. With day one finished, my week was looking promising. Even if none of the other things I'd planned to try for this week worked out, I could always fall back on Morrowind, which I've completed before and will never get tired of. Or Sonic Heroes, which I've actually never played before and I was excited to try. Fortunately for me, and you, my week wasn't anywhere near that boring. So let's run through the highlights of the remaining 6 days. Day 2 was Saturday, and I started off the day by teasing a few posts about my experiment on Twitter. This was when I discovered that YouTube worked on this machine. With the monster sound installed, I could watch videos, but they didn't have any sound playback. Since installing the YMF744 included WDM or Windows Driver model drivers, just like Windows 2000 and XP use, suddenly YouTube could play back videos with sound, and pretty well too. With that working, I whiled away the rest of the daytime playing Morrowind and trying to find some demo scene demos from the 2000 to 2002 time period that would run on the machine. That evening, I embarked on the first real challenge of the week. Could I slice a 3D model for printing on my 3D printer using Windows 98? If you're following along on Twitter, you already know the answer to this, but in the moment I was extremely unsure and more than a little skeptical. A friend of mine had pointed me towards Skyneforge, one of the original 3D model slicing programs from back when 3D printing was just starting to take off. Skyneforge is unique because it's written entirely in Python and uses TK for its graphical user interface. So the key to getting this running lay in finding a version of Python that worked on Windows 98 and wasn't too old for Skyneforge to operate on. That daunting-sounding task ended up being a complete non-issue, as Python 2.5 works natively on Win98 and even installs the necessary TK libraries for GUI applications like Skyneforge. Most of my evening was actually taken up by me learning Skyneforge, since it's from such an early era in 3D printing that it doesn't use any of the modern, typical nomenclature for print settings. There is nothing in Skyneforge about layer height, perimeters, infill, acceleration, extrusion width, none of the things that I know to look for when I'm trying to tweak a profile for one of my printers. And honestly, that's what I ended up doing for most of the evening, tweaking Skyneforge to work with my, in this case, Artillery Hornet. And work it eventually did. Skyneforge was designed to optimize printing on the then new MakerBot 3D printers of 09 to 2011 or so, but once I tweaked things like print speed and extrusion speed, I got the built-in test model to print pretty well on the Hornet. As the final test that night, I sliced up one of my GPU stands and printed it overnight, and lo and behold, it worked, even without any settings for support or brim. Sunday morning started out with breakfast, coffee, and YouTube, followed by some more serious exploration of Outrun 2006. After that, I tried ordering some clothes from Amazon for my upcoming trip. This almost worked. I was actually able to browse the site, even log in, even add things to my cart. That was until Firefox ate up all of my system's RAM and hard crashed. That evening, I got a bee in my bonnet about drawing some art, and I decided I'd try using my old Huion graphics tablet on Windows 98. To my surprise, it actually worked. It was just using the generic HID driver, so there was no pressure sensitivity, but for basic sketching, it totally did the trick, and I was able to get the idea I had in my brain out of my head and into Fractal Design Painter 5. With that success under my belt, I played some more Sonic Heroes and some more Morrowind to round out the weekend. With the next work week upon me, the Win98 machine again became a jukebox for my workday and a games machine at night. I downloaded discographies from artists like Leviathan and Jester, and continued to make forward progress in Morrowind and Sonic Heroes. On Tuesday, the upgrade parts for my black MacBook arrived, and I used my Win98 machine to read iFixit's teardown guide for the machine, allowing me to clean it out, repaste it, upgrade the memory, and swap the original hard drive with an SSD. On Wednesday, things got really interesting. Ron of Ron's Computer Videos invited me to a virtual LAN party he was hosting on his channel. They were playing Unreal Tournament 2004, and I agreed, teasing that I'd be playing on the Win98 machine. I joined the audio portion of the stream from my modern computer and recorded the whole thing with that machine, which totaled over, I think, 20 people at one point. It was pretty wild. The Win98 machine was actually in its element here, delivering smooth frame rates and responsive controls, easily keeping up with the much more modern machines some of the other folks were playing on. Like I said, I recorded the whole match, so here are some of the highlights.
Adrenaline full.
Red power core is vulnerable. Red power core is under attack. Red power core is under attack. Red power core is critical. Red power core destroyed. New round in 5, 4, 3.
So that pretty much capped off my week. It was pretty tough to top an experience like that on a week of Windows 98. Thursday evening arrived with little fanfare and my challenge was officially complete. Along the way, I'd made a few observations that I thought were really interesting that I'd like to share with you now, if you'll have them. The first and more mundane observation happened before the week even started. I knew going into this that I was going to miss out on some things and really wish I were back on a modern platform. But the things I ended up actually missing during the week were much more specific than I thought they were going to be. Two things. There were two things I really missed during my week at Win98: virtual reality and standalone applications. The first is pretty self-explanatory, but specifically, every weekend I hop into VR chat with a bunch of my friends and hang out for a few hours. It's a great way to relax after a stressful week, and I wasn't able to do it this week. The other thing takes a little more explaining. What if I told you that once upon a time the internet was so low bandwidth that the only way to really make efficient use of it was to send raw data between users and interpret that data on either end using purpose-built standalone applications? Services like chat, file sharing, news dissemination, email, and even remote control of other computers used raw data protocols defined by open standards. You could swap one application out for another one if the one you were using didn't meet your needs, without losing everything you had on the network or service you were trying to interact with. Applications were real and tangible and functioned without a persistent network connection. They didn't need to download their user interfaces from a remote server every time you launched them. If it sounds like I'm pining for Netscape Communicator, I'm not. I'm pining for the world that lets you take Netscape Communicator and throw it out the window, use something else that you liked better, without losing access to all of your messages and email addresses. Now sure, Gmail and Office 365 have provisions to hook in an email client of your choice, but how long are those going to last realistically? Or how long before those hooks are walled off behind an inscrutable identity warehouse you have to access through something like OAuth? That's already reality in the business world, and I'm sure it's not far off for consumers. It seems especially likely for today's tech companies, as every single one of them tries to carve out its own little fiefdom of incompatible protocols in order to build a user base it can extract money out of. I miss the days before anyone figured out how to monetize the web. I miss the internet being a planet-wide communication tool that promised to unite humanity. I miss that. I missed it especially this week as I tried to use basic social services like event planning, email, and chat, which have all moved into websites that target only the very latest browser revisions for no good reason other than it makes the shareholders happy when you can say you shipped X number of product revisions this quarter. This year we put a 10 on the box. One of the reasons I love retro tech so much is that most of this stuff, even the really old stuff, would be perfectly usable today if not for the continuous march of progress. Projects like Browse Service and FrogFind show us that the modern web is still perfectly accessible on older machines once you strip out the over-complex formatting code, the JavaScript, the embedded videos. Anyway, sorry, this got a little ranty. My apologies. I did have some really positive realizations this week as well. The first was actually a positive side effect of everything moving into the latest web browsers, and that's that I didn't doom scroll all week. With no access to social media in an easy-to-consume format, my mental health took a noticeable uptick this week. It was kind of incredible. The other thing I noticed was just how fun older games really are. Once you have a barrier up, even a small one that prevents you from going back to the familiar modern titles you know, digging into games like Outrun 2006, Morrowind, and UT 2004 is just as rewarding as trying the latest, newest thing. If you've had trouble getting into older games by just firing them up on your modern systems, maybe taking an operating system vacation is just what you need to discover or rediscover some classic games. And that ultimately is the point of all of this. There is joy packed into those old boxes, cartridges, and optical discs. Good games don't turn bad just because they're old. And if you're struggling to find something to sink your teeth into in the modern day, maybe retro gaming is for you. Anyway, that's all I've got for this particular trip down memory lane. I just want to send heartfelt thanks to Watson, who found this incredible Socket 754 motherboard for me, and Ron of Ron's Computer Videos for inviting me to the best internet LAN party I've been to in ages. If you enjoyed this operating system anachronism, please do consider giving the video a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos from me, the subscribe button really does make a big difference. My name's Amber, and this has been Tech Ambrosia. Have a great night. 98 machine, and I kicked it off with some Elder Scrolls Curry Morrowind. No, that's not how that goes. 64 and GeForce 6600 GP. No, it's not GP. Mouth, say the words are right.